Hello Captains, my name is Commandant Hans and welcome to the channel. I'm excited to start this journey with one of my all-time favorite shipwrecks. In the introductory video, I hinted at what shipwreck we were going to be going after as the first shipwreck location on my map. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Battleship Tirpitz. A little lesser known sister ship of the Bismarck, but still had a rich history and played a key role in the World War II conflict. Now, I would like to point out before we get on to this journey about Battleship Tirpitz is that YouTube has a tendency to take down videos that reflect on certain parts of humanity's history. And I would like to say furthermore that this is a strictly educational video. This is nothing but the history leading up to either A, the construction of the shipwreck, its departure, its demise. This is strictly an educational video. So to kick off this episode, I thought about doing a little bit of a backstory to the evidential creation of the Tirpitz. So in 1918, World War I is officially declared over. And in 1922, the powers of the world, Japan, the United Kingdom, France, Italy, United States, they all signed what is called the Washington Naval Treaty. And what that did was limit the arms race for the production of all naval vessels. Now, this was just one of the treaties that Germany and Austria-Hungary had to sign after the war to limit another outbreak of another world war. Look how good that did. But essentially, the Washington Naval Treaty limited the production of battleships, aircraft carriers, cruisers, and limited them to 10,000 displaced tons. Then, in 1930, the Treaty of London introduced the fact of submarines, because submarines did play a key part in the later stages of World War I, and then the London Treaty included submarines and the production and limitations of submarines. There are a lot more fine workings of all the treaties and all of the limitations and land grabs that happened to Germany in that time period between 1918 and the reconstruction of Germany in the 1930s. It's about this time that a man in Germany started getting a lot of power, a lot of fame for his radical views on how the world should be, and that person was, of course, Hitler. Hitler did away with the Washington Treaty and the London Treaty, started ramping up production of the Luftwaffe, the Wehrmacht, the Kriegsmarine. This led to the development of the Bismarck-class battleships, Tirpitz and Bismarck. Named after Alfred Peter Friedrich von Tirpitz, who was a German admiral in the late 1800s and into the early 1900s. The battleship was laid down the 2nd of November in 1936, built by Kriegsmarine Werft Wilhelmshaven. With the production of the Tirpitz taking a little less than 3 years, she was launched on the 1st of April in 1939 and commissioned February 25th of 1941. With the completion of the Tirpitz and Hitler seemingly throwing the Washington Naval Treaty into the garbage where he thought it belonged, Tirpitz came in at a staggering 42,900 tons unloaded and 52,600 tons fully loaded. And this ship was fully loaded. Housed inside this 792-foot monster were 12 Wagner boilers producing 120,000 kilowatts worth of power. Paired that with 30-knot top speed and a range of 9,000 nautical miles, the Tirpitz was a force to be reckoned with. The only thing more impressive than her propulsion, top speed, and range was her armament. Her primary armament consisted of the 8 15-inch naval cannons mounted to her deck. Her secondary armament was impressive as well, with 12 15-centimeter guns, 16 10-centimeter guns, 16 3.7-centimeter guns, and 12 2-centimeter flak 30s. With an overhaul that came to the ship a little later in her time, she was overhauled with 8 torpedo tubes mounted onto her deck. For aerial reconnaissance, she was mounted with 4 Arado AR-196 float planes housed in the center of the ship, with 1 catapult launching all 4 of them. With a belt armament of 320 millimeters, or 13 inches for my American friends, she was an absolute force to be reckoned with, just like the world had seen with the Bismarck. So, February 25th, 1941, Tirpitz conducts her sea trials and then is granted access into the fleet. Then she was stationed in the naval base in Kiel. So, while stationed in Kiel, Kiel actually became a hub for a temporary Baltic fleet for Germany to prevent and have a quick response time to any kind of Soviet incursion after they invaded the Soviet Union. It is also very worthwhile to know that during the construction of both Bismarck and Tirpitz, the RAF was trying to obliterate this ship. They kept on sending bombing raids over, and apparently luck and fortune was just on their side, because Tirpitz was not hit by the numerous bombing runs on the Wilhelmshaven shipyard. And then it's also notable to mention that while in Kiel, the RAF tried to bomb Tirpitz again and failed. So apparently that was just perfect luck. So in November of 1941, under the orders of Grand Admiral Erich Raeder, Tirpitz was deployed up to Norway to interrupt convoys going from the US and the UK going into Russia. So Tirpitz made the daring journey from Kiel all the way up into the fjords of Norway. So this gentleman right here, the guy by the name of Captain Carl Topp, he was the active captain aboard the Tirpitz as she was going along her sea trials and then into the Baltic Fleet where she was stationed at Kiel. So before Tirpitz was deployed up to Norway while she was still in Kiel, she had a retrofit of additional anti-aircraft mounts and the installation of the torpedo tubes. After that, Captain Topp said that the ship was seaworthy, and on the 10th of January 1942, she made the treacherous journey from Kiel all the way up to the northernmost fjords up in Norway. It is also worth mentioning that in this time in 1942, a very drastic change was happening. The Germans had something very special taken away from them. And that special thing was the German Enigma machine. Off of the coast of Iceland, U-110 was severely damaged by British destroyers, and she surfaced, hoping to get her crew offloaded and then scuttling the ship with the precious Enigma machine on board. Everything with that plan went sideways when the British destroyer came alongside the sinking submarine, and men gallantly leapt onto the sinking U-boat and managed to capture a fully intact Enigma machine as well as the Enigma codebook for 1941. The Germans were very unaware of the fact that their codes had been breached, and in 1942, a radio message was sent to the British Admiralty telling them that Tirpitz was on the move. But luck was on the Tirpitz's side. The RAF launched air raids, but due to poor visibility and poor weather, they were not able to locate the Tirpitz, and she managed to slip all the way up to Norway undetected. That luck did not last long after an RAF scouting plane managed to take photographs of Tirpitz in one of her fjords. Operation Polar Night, the relocation of Battleship Tirpitz into Fulton Fjord, was accompanied by 4 German destroyers, Z4, Z5, Z8, and Z29. But with all of this preparation, the Norwegian resistance transmitted the location of Tirpitz before she departed, and the RAF scrambled another bombing raid in order to sink the German Pride. But the RAF couldn't find the ship. Tirpitz had been cleverly camouflaged with the surrounding areas of cut-down trees in the small fjord that she now lay in. Along with all the trees lining Tirpitz's hull as camouflage, smoke generators and anti-aircraft batteries were installed around the fjord for additional protection. Fuel shortages kept Tirpitz from doing any major operations, and she gained the nickname the Lonely Queen of the North because of her rare deployments. So Tirpitz's main goal up in the fjords in Norway were operations against Allied shipping convoys going to Russia and aiding the Russians in their fight against Germany. Due to low amounts of fuel shortages and other movements of other German battleships such as Scharnhorst and Gneisenau, accompanied with cruiser Prince Eugen, Tirpitz really did not see any action while she was up in the fjords. She was intended to hit one of the outbound convoys designated PQ-8 out of Russia, but then it was abandoned due to weather. Tirpitz was actually used in a deception used to distract the British when the British were trying to run Operation Cerberus. And all Tirpitz did was just steam full ahead out of her fjord and then circle back around. Besides going after outbound convoy PQ-8 and outbound convoy PQ-12, she had a pretty formidable task force that was under her. Primarily consisting of destroyers, Tirpitz was in command of Z-14, Z-5, Z-7, Z-25, and a couple of torpedo boats, as well as the cruiser Admiral Scheer. Tirpitz and her battle group got cleared to go after PQ-12 after a Luftwaffe reconnaissance plane spotted them. But the reconnaissance plane failed to mention that the battle group seen contained HMS Duke of York and the battle cruiser HMS Renown, who were escorting the convoy at those times with 4 destroyers. Unbeknownst to the German task force, Admiral Tuve, who was commanding a small group of ships, was providing distant cover support for the convoys going through the treacherous Norwegian waters, led by HMS King George V, HMS Victorious, and HMS Berwick, along with a company of 6 destroyers. Admiral Tuve was then given orders that the Enigma over in Bletchley Park had picked up radio transmission that Tirpitz and her battle group were underway going after convoy PQ-12 and was ordered to assist. Admiral Tuve then ordered HMS Victorious to launch albacore torpedo bombers to attack the group. Tirpitz, being lucky, managed to evade all torpedo runs at her. The German gunners also got a little bit of target practice due to the fact that they shot down 2 of the albacores. But the British weren't done just yet. While Tirpitz was in another fjord, 33 Halifax bombers attacked her. Luck was on Tirpitz's side again because none of the bombs impacted. After that, the RAF launched another 2 bombing raids and scored no direct hits on Tirpitz or her battle group. Tirpitz was then deployed again with Admiral Hipper and 6 destroyers to go after convoy designated PQ-17, which was inbound to Russia via Iceland. Guarding PQ-17 was the USS Washington, the HMS Duke of York, and the HMS Victorious. Attempting to leave her fjord in Norway, Tirpitz was attacked by the Russian submarine K-21, who fired a spread of 2 torpedoes. The Russian commander of K-21 said that both torpedoes impacted, but from other sources, they said that no torpedoes impacted the Tirpitz. So, with that, Tirpitz turned around and went back to her fjord and moored, and allowed the Luftwaffe and the U-boats to pick off the remainders of the convoy. Out of the 34 troop transport ships in PQ-17, the Germans managed to sink 21 in a crippling blow. On the 23rd of October, 1942, it was deemed that Tirpitz was long overdue for an overhaul, and with the arrival of the battleship Scharnhorst in the Fulton Fjord, Tirpitz was temporarily taken out of action. Now, there is a little bit of a time period between 1942 and 1943 where Tirpitz really didn't do much. In that time frame, the RAF was gathering a lot of information from all of their long-range reconnaissance aircraft about the strength of the Fulton Fjord and where Tirpitz was located. But coming into 1944, the British deemed the Tirpitz to still be a major threat, and they wanted her neutralized. Now, the British really wanted to put this ship out of action, so they devised multiple operations to infiltrate and or obliterate the Fulton Fjord. Some of the more notable operations that proved to be somewhat successful would be Operation Source. The British tried desperately to find innovative ways in order to sneak into this smaller fjord in order to take Tirpitz out. What they came up with was the X-Craft. The X-Craft were a type of midget submarines. Each one of these midget submarines had a crew complement of 4. Codename Operation Source. Of the 6 X-Craft that were deployed on this mission, only 3 managed to get to their targets. 1 was never heard from again, 1 had mechanical malfunctions, and the other one never left port. On the morning of September 22nd, the 3 X-Craft snuck their way into the Fulton Fjord to place magnetic mines underneath the hull of the Tirpitz. Out of the 3 submarines, only 2 were able to pass the submarine nets and sneak underneath Tirpitz to lay their magnetic mines. Both crews of the X-5 and the X-6, the ones that put the mines underneath the Tirpitz, were found, shot at, and then surrendered. The POWs of the X-Crafts were brought on board for questioning, but Captain Top was confused when he was greeted with salutes from the British sailors. So, as the man that Top was, all the men were gifted warm tea and food, not knowing that what lay beneath his ship were 2 ticking time bombs. All of a sudden, hell let loose when one of the mines prematurely detonated underneath Sea Turret and blew the ship into the air. Another notable operation deemed by the British was Operation Tungsten. Combined forces from the HMS Victorious, Furious, and escort carriers Emperor, Fencer, Pursuer, and Searcher. The attack consisted of 40 Barracuda dive bombers carrying large complements of bombs, ranging anywhere from 500 pound multi-purpose bombs all the way to 1,600-pound armor-piercing bombs. Some of the Barracudas managed to land some direct hits on Tirpitz, only doing minor superstructural damage. They might have not sunk the Tirpitz, but they did inflict massive damage. About 122 men were reported KIA, with another 316 others wounded. More notable operations were Operation Planet, Brawn, Tiger Claw, Mascot, and Goodwood. In a later episode, I will go over the operations that were meant to kill the Tirpitz. By this time, it's mid-1944, and Tirpitz needs to be relocated because Fultonfjord is not proving to be the best cover for him. In mid-1944, the Tirpitz was relocated to a small island of Hokoya, outside of Terosmo. Another 3 operations to sink the Tirpitz were underway. Time and time again, it seemed like the Tirpitz and her resilience made it almost impossible for the RAF to finally sink her. The final operation on the Tirpitz's life was Operation Catechism. A force rivaling 32 Lancaster bombers from No. 9 and No. 617 Squadron dropped a total of 30 Tally Boy bombs, 2 impacting Tirpitz on her left side. Within 10 minutes of the bombs detonating on Tirpitz, she was already at a 35-degree list. 18 minutes after the bombs were dropped, a large explosion rocked Turret C as one of the internal magazines detonated. After the detonation, the Lonely Queen of the North rapidly flipped over and capsized and sank in her moorings. After facing death multiple times from multiple operations that would not sink the mighty Queen of the North, she finally laid to rest on the bottom of the fjord, burying 1,200 of her beloved sailors with her. There were only 200 survivors after this sinking. As Tirpitz lay on the bottom of her shallow grave, another 82 men were cut out of the hull. She lay there for the remainder of the war until 1948 to 1947, when a Norwegian and German salvage company finally broke her up for scrap. Though that there is not a lot left of the mighty Tirpitz, divers have said that they have found chunks of metal, probably from either the explosions that had ejected metal off of her hull, or a little piece of her that still remains where she lie. And that brings to the conclusion of the first shipwreck that I have plotted on the map. An incredible story of a ship that did not see a lot of action, but apparently the British wanted her gone. The number 1 pin on the map, the first one that I ever did. I had a hard time trying to figure out what would be the first shipwreck. A lot of people would say the Titanic, or the Bismarck, or the Edmunds Fitzgerald, or something along the lines of that. I wanted to go with the underdog. One that's not as known, but still had an amazing history. Even though that she really did not have a lot of combat history, the amount of operations to sink the Lonely Queen of the North is staggering for a singular ship. For every pin that I've put in the map, I've always taken a moment of silence to honor those who have fallen, be it in wartime or simply just manning their post on a ship that they call home. So I take a moment of silence for the 1,200 sailors who gave their life, fighting for their reasons, but fighting for their homeland. That concludes the story of the Lonely Queen of the North, Battleship Tirpitz. I hope everybody enjoyed this video. This is my first video that I've ever made besides the introductory video, and I know that there are little bumps that I have to work out in my videos, but it was fun putting together this video. It truly was. I got to tell the story of history forgotten in time. I look forward to our next encounter, Captains. I have plenty of more stories to tell, and I'm not stopping anytime soon. Though I do feel like I can tease the next shipwreck that would be on the map. Located off of South America lie the scuttle shipwreck of another pride in the German flotilla. Thank you all for watching the video. Till next time, Captains.